During the wedding toast, my friend leaned over and said, "Can you believe she invited Liam after what he did to your face?" I choked on my champagne and almost dropped the glass. "She did? Don't worry, he's not coming. Something about being out of town. Still, not exactly girl code, is it?" She patted my shoulder. "You have nothing to worry about." But she didn't know what Liam had whispered that night. "All of this is your fault, and someday everyone will know." I forced myself to smile as the best man continued his speech, but my eyes were scanning the reception hall, checking every face. The last time I'd seen Liam, I'd been on the bathroom floor spitting teeth onto the tile while he fixed his hair in the mirror and reminded me that no one would ever believe me. He said, "Tell anyone and I'll make sure they know the truth about what you made me do." I still didn't understand what truth he meant. The not knowing was almost worse than the bruises because it made me question everything. Maybe I had done something. Maybe it was my fault. I excused myself to the bathroom, my heels clicking too loud on the marble floor. In the mirror, I fixed my lipstick with shaking hands. He wouldn't come. Not after I'd stayed silent. Not after I'd let him keep his reputation. That was the deal we made. The only thing he had to do to keep me from talking to the cops was stay away from my life and our friends. He wouldn't go back on that now, I told myself. Not for no reason. Not at a wedding. But then my phone buzzed. A photo of me from 30 seconds ago, walking to the bathroom. The message said, "Time for everyone to know." I ran out of the bathroom, but someone grabbed me from behind, hand over my mouth, dragging me into the stairwell. Liam slammed me against the wall and my head cracked against the concrete. Stars exploded across my vision. He said, "Long time no see." The stairwell door opened. A drunk groomsman looking for somewhere to smoke. Liam let go of me instantly, that practiced smile appearing. The groomsman asked if everything was okay, and Liam said, "Just catching up with my ex." The guy left. Liam grabbed my hair, yanking me up the stairs. I screamed, but he slammed my face against the railing. Blood filled my mouth. He dragged me higher, my heels scraping concrete. He said, "You're going to admit what you did." I sobbed. "I don't know what you're talking about." He said, "Stop lying. You know exactly what you did. How you humiliated me. How you planned it all." The roof door was propped open with a brick. He'd planned this. He shoved me outside into the cold air. The wedding was 5 stories down, the guests laughing, oblivious. He backed me toward the edge and said, "You're going to jump. Or I go down there and tell everyone what you really are." I said, "I didn't do anything." His face twisted with rage. "You did everything. You calculated every move, every word. You wanted this to happen." He grabbed my shoulders and pushed me backward. The ledge hit my thighs hard and I grabbed his arms to keep from falling. The drop yawned behind me. He said, "They already think you're unstable. They'll believe you jumped out of guilt." I knew there was no point trying to defend myself, to keep insisting that I'd never done anything to justify him putting his hands on me. All I was doing was making him angrier and crazier. He pushed harder, bending me backward over the edge. My feet barely touched the roof now. All he had to do was let go. I saw a brick from the demolished chimney within reach. I let go with one hand, stretching for it. He laughed, thinking I was flailing. My fingers closed around it and I swung at his temple with everything I had. It connected with a wet crack and he stumbled backward, releasing me. I fell forward onto the roof, gasping. He was holding his head, blood running between his fingers. He said, "You crazy bitch," and lunged at me. We crashed onto the concrete, rolling toward the edge. He got on top, hands around my throat, squeezing. Black spots filled my vision. He said, "Should have jumped when you had the chance." My hand found the brick again. I swung it up, catching him in the jaw. He reared back and I pushed him off, scrambling away. But he grabbed my ankle, dragging me back toward the edge. My nails broke as I clawed at the concrete. We were at the ledge now, him pulling me over while I kicked at his face. My dress tore as I slid closer to the drop. He stood over me, foot on my fingers where I gripped a drainage pipe, and said, "Tell me what you did. Admit you made me hurt you." That's when I knew I didn't have a choice. It was either die or tell him what he wanted to hear, even if it would destroy my life. Requested Reds is on Spotify now. Check out link in the description or comments. I opened my mouth and the words came out shaking. "I planned it all. Every single thing. I wanted to hurt you. I made you do it." His face changed, the rage shifting into something worse, something satisfied. He pulled out his phone with one hand while keeping the other on my shoulder, holding me at the edge. He hit record and leaned closer, the phone pointed at my face. "Say it again," he said, and I repeated the lies while the 5-story drop waited behind me. "I planned everything to hurt you." The phone screen glowed between us and I saw my opening. I drove my knee up into his groin as hard as I could and shoved him backward with both hands. He stumbled and dropped the phone, doubling over, and I didn't wait to see more. I ran for the roof door, my heels catching on loose gravel, my torn dress flapping against my legs. Behind me he was shouting, but I didn't look back. I yanked the door open and threw myself into the stairwell. My dress caught on the metal railing and ripped further as I took the stairs 3 at a time. The concrete walls echoed with my footsteps and his voice somewhere above. 3rd floor, I saw a bathroom sign and crashed through the door. I locked myself in the last stall with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. My phone was still in my purse somehow. I pulled it out and my fingers slipped on the screen twice before I got 911 dialed. The operator answered and I tried to whisper, but it came out as crying. I'm at the Riverside venue, 5th floor. He tried to kill me. I'm in the bathroom. She kept talking, asking questions, telling me to stay on the line. I heard the bathroom door open and my whole body froze. Someone was crying, the operator said, and I realized it was me making those sounds. Then a male voice outside the stall. Hey, are you okay in there? I recognized it, the groomsman from the stairwell. Seth. I managed to say I need help and he was calling for venue staff. 2 women came in, their voices going high and worried when they saw my face. They got the stall door open and helped me out. One of them was talking to the 911 operator, while the other one wrapped her jacket around my shoulders. They moved me to a locked office near the kitchens, and someone brought ice wrapped in a towel. The operator stayed on the phone until we heard sirens. The EMTs came in with their bags and bright flashlights. They had cameras and took pictures before they touched anything. The gash on my head, the bruises already forming on my throat, my split lip, the scrapes covering my arms. They asked if I could move my neck and checked my pupils with a light that hurt. I let them do whatever they needed because all I could think about was staying alive. Just staying alive for the next minute and the next. One of them was talking about possible concussion, and the other was cleaning the blood off my face with something that stung. Venue security came through saying they locked the roof access and were searching for him. Staff members were giving statements to someone, describing how they found me injured and scared. I could hear music from downstairs, the reception still going, everyone dancing and drinking while I sat in this office with blood on my dress. At the hospital, they took me straight to a room. A doctor came in and examined my head, asking me to follow her finger with my eyes and remember 3 words she told me. They cleaned my wounds properly, and a nurse brought me water in a plastic cup. Then a woman appeared in the doorway holding a folder. She introduced herself as Aurora from Victim Services and pulled a chair close to mine. She said I didn't have to make any decisions right now except whether I wanted to talk to police. Her voice was calm and she didn't ask me what happened, just sat there while I tried to stop shaking. Detective Hale arrived maybe 20 minutes later. She had kind eyes and a notebook, and she said we could do a full interview later when I felt calmer. Right now, the priority was medical care and making sure I was safe. She took some basic information, my name and Liam's name and what venue we'd been at. I kept apologizing for not remembering details clearly, and she told me that was completely normal after head trauma. I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd said on that roof, whether he actually got it recorded. The shame of those words, even though I only said them to survive, made me want to throw up. Aurora must have seen something on my face because she leaned forward and said that statements made under threat of death aren't confessions. She said it again slower. Coerced statements don't count. Detective Hale asked if I wanted to call family. I thought about my parents and how I'd have to explain everything, and I just couldn't do it yet. I gave her Lucy's number instead, my friend from college who moved here 2 years ago and never met Liam. Lucy answered on the second ring, and I heard Detective Hale explaining in a careful voice that I was okay, but I'd been hurt, and I was at the hospital. Within an hour, Lucy was there. She came into the room and took one look at my face and didn't ask a single question. She just squeezed my hand and said, "You're staying at my place." Aurora helped us make a safety plan right there in the ER. New phone number first thing tomorrow. Lock down all social media. Someone with me at all times for at least the next few days. Aurora wrote it all down on a card and gave me her direct number. She said to call anytime, even 3 in the morning, if I needed anything or felt unsafe. Detective Hale said she'd be in touch about next steps and evidence collection. They discharged me around midnight with papers about concussion symptoms and wound care. Lucy drove me to her apartment in silence, and I stared out the window at the empty streets. She made up her spare room while I sat on the couch still wearing the torn dress. I couldn't make myself move. Lucy came back from the spare room and sat next to me without saying anything. She pulled a blanket over my shoulders, and I realized I was shaking, even though the apartment was warm. She told me the bed was ready whenever I wanted to sleep, and that she put fresh towels in the bathroom. I nodded but didn't move from the couch. My brain kept replaying the roof, the ledge, his hands pushing me backward. Lucy turned on the TV to some cooking show with the volume low and just sat there with me. Around 1 in the morning, she fell asleep on the other end of the couch, and I stayed awake staring at the screen without seeing anything. My phone buzzed at 2 and I grabbed it fast, heart jumping. Unknown number. I opened the message and a video started playing automatically. It was me on the roof saying I planned everything to hurt him. My voice sounded clear and calm in the recording, nothing like the terror I'd felt. The clip was only 10 seconds long and it showed none of the ledge behind me, none of his hands on my shoulders. Nothing that proved I was being bent backward over a 5-story drop when I said those words. It looked like I was standing in some random location making a voluntary confession. I watched it 3 times trying to understand how he'd edited it so perfectly. He must have recorded it on his phone when he leaned in close to hear me better. The angle made it impossible to tell where we were or what was happening. Just me saying exactly what he wanted in a video that could destroy everything. I shook Lucy awake and showed her the screen. She watched the video twice and her face went pale. She asked what I was going to do and I said I didn't know, but we needed to save it as evidence. She grabbed her laptop and helped me screenshot the message, the unknown number, the timestamp showing 2 in the morning. We downloaded the video file and backed it up to 3 different cloud services. Then Lucy pulled up all my social media accounts one by one, and we changed every password, enabled 2-factor authentication, disabled location services, and set everything to private. She made me turn off all location tracking on my phone and showed me how to check which apps had access to my camera and microphone. We went through my entire phone, deleting apps I didn't need and restricting permissions on everything else. By 4 in the morning, we had everything locked down as tight as we could make it. I still couldn't sleep, so I opened my notes app and started writing everything I remembered from the roof. I wrote down exact quotes from what Liam said, the timeline of events, the fact that Seth saw us in the stairwell. I described the brick propping open the roof door and how that proved he'd planned it in advance. I wrote about the ledge hitting my thighs and my feet barely touching the roof when he pushed me backward. Aurora had said details matter in court, and I was terrified I'd forget something important later. My hands were shaking so bad I had to retype sentences multiple times, but I kept going. I documented the photo he'd sent of me walking to the bathroom, the message saying it was time for everyone to know, the hand over my mouth dragging me into the stairwell. I wrote down every injury I could remember and where on my body each one was. By 6 in the morning, I had 4 pages of notes with timestamps and descriptions. My phone rang at 8 and I jumped so hard I almost dropped it. Detective Hale's name showed on the screen. She said she'd requested security footage from the venue through a subpoena. The process would take time because of legal requirements, but she was prioritizing it as evidence for an attempted murder investigation. She explained that we needed the stairwell footage showing him dragging me upstairs because it proved I wasn't a willing participant. I told her about the video he'd sent at 2 in the morning, and she said to forward it to her immediately, along with all the screenshots Lucy helped me take. She said the edited video actually helped our case because it showed consciousness of guilt, that he knew what he'd done was wrong and was trying to create a false narrative. I felt slightly better after hanging up, but then I remembered something. Seth, the groomsman, had seen us in the stairwell. He'd seen my injuries and heard me crying. I grabbed my phone and searched through the wedding hashtag on social media until I found photos he was tagged in. His profile was public, so I could see his full name was Seth Branson. I sent him a direct message explaining who I was and what had happened on the roof. I asked if he'd be willing to give a statement to police about what he witnessed in the stairwell. I tried to keep the message short and factual without sounding desperate, even though I was. Lucy made coffee and toast, but I couldn't eat anything. She said we should go back to the venue and talk to them about the security footage ourselves. I didn't want to go back there, but she was right that we needed to know exactly what the cameras had captured. We drove over that afternoon and met with the operations manager in his office. He pulled up the security system on his computer and showed us the camera locations. The roof camera had been broken for 3 weeks, but the hallway and stairwell cameras were working. He played the stairwell footage, and I watched Liam grab my hair and yank me up the stairs while I tried to pull away. My heels scraped against the concrete steps, and you could see me screaming even though there was no audio. The footage was clear enough to see blood on my face from where he'd slammed me against the railing. The operations manager looked sick watching it. He said he wanted to help, but company policy required a subpoena before releasing any footage because of liability issues. I wanted to scream at him about bureaucracy and policies while someone was trying to kill me, but Detective Hale had warned me this would happen. I thanked him for showing us what existed and asked him to preserve all the files. Lucy drove me back to her apartment and I called Aurora. She said she'd been thinking about my case and wanted to connect me with a legal aid attorney named Chase Fowler, who handled restraining orders. She gave me his number and said to call him immediately because we needed to start building a protection order case while Detective Hale worked on the criminal investigation. I called Chase and he answered on the second ring. He asked me to summarize what happened and I gave him the basic timeline. He said the venue footage, my medical records, and Seth's statement could be enough for a temporary restraining order even before criminal charges were filed. He explained that restraining orders were civil cases with a lower burden of proof than criminal cases, which meant we could get protection in place faster. He said he'd start drafting the petition and we'd file it within the next few days. That afternoon, I was scrolling through social media when I saw Liam had posted something vague about crazy exes and the truth coming out soon. He didn't mention my name, but 3 mutual friends immediately messaged me asking what was going on. I realized he was already building his counter-narrative, telling people his version before I could tell mine. One friend asked if I was okay and I didn't know how to answer that. Another friend said she'd heard something happened at the wedding and wanted to know my side. The third friend just sent question marks. I didn't respond to any of them because I didn't have the energy to explain, and I knew whatever I said would get back to Liam somehow. That evening, Sophia sent me a text that said I ruined her wedding by starting drama and that I should have stayed away from Liam in the first place. She wrote 3 long paragraphs about how embarrassing it was to have police at her reception and how I made everything about myself. I read it twice and then blocked her number without typing a single word back. I didn't have the energy to defend myself to someone who wasn't on that roof and didn't see what he tried to do to me. Detective Hale called the next morning asking me to come in for evidence collection. At the station, a forensic tech scraped under my fingernails for his DNA and took photos of every bruise on my body. The marks had fully developed by then. Purple and yellow across my throat where his hands had been, dark fingerprints on my arms, scrapes down my legs from the concrete. They showed me photos of the brick they'd collected from the roof, tagged and sealed in an evidence bag with his blood still visible on the corner. Seeing it in that sterile plastic made my stomach turn, but I also felt something like relief because it was proof that couldn't be explained away or dismissed. Chase called that afternoon saying he'd filed the emergency temporary restraining order petition, and we had a hearing scheduled for next week. He walked me through what would happen, how the judge would review the evidence and decide if I needed protection. Aurora met me at a coffee shop later and went over courthouse security procedures, explaining where the metal detectors were and which entrance to use. She told me bailiffs were trained to handle situations if Liam showed up and caused problems, that I wouldn't be alone in that building even though it would feel scary. On Monday, I was trying to focus on work when Chandler called me into his office. He looked uncomfortable and said HR received anonymous emails over the weekend, claiming I was mentally unstable and making false accusations against an innocent man. The emails included details about the wedding, and said the company should know they employed someone who creates drama and lies about good people. I pulled up the police report on my phone and showed him the photos of my injuries, the detective's contact information, the evidence collection paperwork. He studied everything for a long time, and then said he'd keep this confidential while I handled the legal situation, that HR wouldn't take action based on anonymous emails when I had documentation proving what happened. I spent my lunch break searching through mutual friends' social media looking for anyone who might know about Liam's past relationships. I found a photo from 2 years ago tagged with Mariana Conley, her arm around Liam at some party, both of them smiling. I clicked through to her profile and saw she'd moved to a different city shortly after that photo was taken. I sent her a careful message saying I'd dated Liam too, and experienced something similar, asking if she'd be willing to talk about her experience with him. I tried to keep it short and not sound desperate, even though I needed to know if I was the only one or if there was a pattern. Mariana responded that evening. She said she'd talk to me, but only if I promised to keep her name out of anything public, because she'd spent 2 years rebuilding her life and couldn't risk him finding out where she was. We scheduled a phone call for the next day, and I felt this tiny spark of hope for the first time since the roof. Like maybe I wasn't crazy, and maybe someone else understood what he was really capable of behind that charming smile. During our call the next afternoon, Mariana described everything in this flat, careful voice like she'd told the story before to therapists, or maybe just to herself. She said Liam was perfect at first, attentive and romantic, but then he started getting mad about small things like her talking to male coworkers or wearing certain clothes. When she tried to leave, he got violent and then threatened to tell everyone she was unstable and abusive if she said anything. She still had old text messages where he wrote things like, "Everyone will believe me over you and you'll never prove what really happened." Hearing those exact same threats come out of someone else's mouth made me want to cry, because it meant this was who he was, not something I'd caused or deserved. That night, Lucy and I were sitting on her couch watching some cooking show when she got up to take out the trash. She came back inside fast and locked the door, saying she saw someone standing across the street just staring up at the building. We went to the window and looked, but whoever it was had moved or left. I called the police and they sent an officer over, but by the time he arrived, there was no one there. He took a report and said he'd have patrol cars drive by more often, but I could tell he thought we were being paranoid or seeing things that weren't there. I went to the hardware store first thing the next morning and bought door jammers for under the knobs and a cheap security camera that connected to my phone. Back at Lucy's apartment, I installed everything myself because I couldn't wait for landlords or police to make me feel safe in the place where I was sleeping. Lucy helped me test the door jammers and set up the camera app, and just having these small barriers between me and the outside made me breathe a little easier, even though I knew they wouldn't stop someone who really wanted to get in. Aurora came over that afternoon with a legal pad and helped me create a detailed timeline of every interaction I'd ever had with Liam. We wrote down dates and locations and who else was there, took screenshots of every text message and social media post, organized everything into folders labeled by month. She showed me how to present evidence in a way that made sense to judges and prosecutors, how to connect each incident to show a pattern instead of isolated events. By the time we finished, I had this thick file of documentation proving that what happened on the roof wasn't random or out of nowhere, but the end result of months of escalating threats and control. The next morning, Detective Hale called while I was making coffee in Lucy's kitchen. She said Liam had filed his own police report claiming I attacked him with a brick, without any reason or warning. My stomach dropped even though she explained this was normal abuser behavior, trying to confuse everyone about who the real victim was. She said he was attempting to claim self-defense before we could build our case, but hearing that he was already twisting the story made me feel sick. I asked if this would hurt my restraining order hearing, and she said it might make things more complicated, but we had medical photos and witness statements on our side. After we hung up, I just stood there holding my coffee mug, watching the steam rise and thinking about how he always stayed 2 steps ahead. Lucy came into the kitchen and asked what was wrong, so I told her about Liam's counter report. She got angry and said anyone who looked at the evidence would see he was lying, but I wasn't so sure anymore because he was good at making people believe him. Chase called that afternoon and asked me to come to his office for hearing prep. I took the bus across town, checking over my shoulder the whole way, and sitting near the driver where I felt safer. His office was small and crowded with file boxes, and he cleared a chair for me while pulling out a legal pad covered in notes. He said Liam's lawyer would try to make me look crazy, or like I was seeking revenge for a bad breakup. He told me to answer every question with just facts. No emotions or guesses about what Liam was thinking. He made me practice responding to hostile questions, stopping me every time I started to explain or justify myself. He said if I felt upset during testimony, I should pause and take a breath before answering, that judges respected composure more than perfect words. We went through mock questions for 2 hours until my head hurt, but I understood why it mattered because one wrong answer could make me look unstable. Walking back to the bus stop, I felt more prepared, but also more scared because now I knew exactly how Liam's lawyer would attack me. My phone buzzed with a message from Seth saying he would provide a written statement about seeing my injuries and hearing me cry in the stairwell. He admitted he was worried about social problems with mutual friends, but said it was the right thing to do. I wanted to cry from relief because I needed someone besides Lucy and Aurora to confirm I wasn't making this up. I messaged back thanking him and saying I understood it was hard to get involved. The next morning, Chandler called me into his office looking uncomfortable. He said Liam's lawyer had sent the company a copy of the edited roof video along with a letter threatening legal action if they didn't fire me. I felt my face get hot with shame even though I hadn't done anything wrong. Chandler said he had to take this seriously because of company liability, and I started to panic that I was about to lose my job on top of everything else. Then he said Chase had already sent them a response letter explaining the video was recorded while Liam was threatening to kill me. He said HR reviewed everything and they weren't firing me, but he wanted me to know what was happening. I thanked him and left his office before I started crying, going straight to the bathroom to splash cold water on my face. That evening, I sat on Lucy's couch with my laptop, scrolling through every old message I'd ever exchanged with Liam. I was trying to find what triggered this level of rage, what I'd supposedly done to deserve being dragged to a roof. I read through months of texts looking for the fight or the humiliation he kept talking about. There was nothing except normal relationship stuff, me asking about his day or making plans for dinner. I couldn't find any moment where I'd hurt him or planned anything against him. The only thing I could figure was that I existed, and he decided I was responsible for something going wrong in his life. Lucy came home with takeout and found me still staring at my screen. She asked what I was looking for, and I said I didn't know anymore, maybe proof that I wasn't crazy for not understanding what he wanted me to admit. She closed my laptop and said I needed to eat something and stop trying to make sense of someone who didn't make sense. My phone rang while we were eating, and it was Mariana calling back. She said she had new information about Liam that might help my case. He'd been fired from his job 3 months ago because of harassment complaints from female coworkers. She said he blamed her publicly on social media, even though she hadn't worked at that company in years. She explained he had this pattern of creating scapegoats whenever his life went wrong, finding someone to blame for his own failures. She said when they dated, he'd accused her of sabotaging his career and ruining his reputation, the same kind of vague accusations he was making against me now. Hearing about this pattern made me feel less alone because it meant this wasn't really about me at all. I was just whoever happened to be available when he needed someone to blame. Detective Hale called 2 days later with good news for once. The subpoena got approved and the venue released the stairwell footage. She said it clearly showed Liam grabbing my hair and forcing me upstairs while I tried to pull away. It wasn't the roof itself, but it proved he was the one attacking me, not the other way around. She said this footage would be strong evidence at the restraining order hearing. I asked when I could see it, and she said I didn't need to watch myself getting hurt again, that she would handle presenting it to the judge. That night, another threatening message arrived from a different phone number. It said he knew where I was staying and I couldn't hide forever. I screenshot it immediately and forwarded it to Detective Hale without even responding. She called back within minutes saying this violated the emergency no-contact order and would strengthen our case. She asked if I felt safe at Lucy's apartment, and I said yes. But I was lying because I didn't feel safe anywhere anymore. The next morning, I had my first therapy intake appointment with a counselor who worked with domestic violence survivors. I sat in her office answering questions about what happened, and when she asked me to describe the roof, I heard myself say someone tried to kill me. Saying those words out loud made it feel more real and more scary than it had been living in my head. She asked how I was sleeping, and I said badly, how I was eating, and I said barely, whether I felt safe, and I said no. She explained that everything I was feeling was normal after what I'd survived. We scheduled weekly appointments, and she gave me some breathing exercises for when I started to panic. Walking out of her office, I felt exhausted, but also a little bit hopeful that maybe I could learn to live with this instead of just surviving it. That afternoon, the venue operations manager called with information that changed everything. He said they'd found access logs showing someone propped the roof door open 2 hours before the wedding ceremony started. This proved Liam had planned the whole thing in advance, that it wasn't a sudden fight that got out of control. No, Detective Hale said this turned it from assault into premeditated attempted murder in terms of how prosecutors would view the case. I sat on Lucy's couch after that call just staring at the wall, trying to process that he'd spent hours planning how to kill me while I was downstairs at a wedding thinking I was safe. I sat on Lucy's couch after that call just staring at the wall, trying to process that he'd spent hours planning how to kill me while I was downstairs at a wedding thinking I was safe. 2 days later, a thick envelope arrived at Lucy's apartment addressed to me. Chase had warned me this might happen, but seeing it still made my hands shake. The cease and desist letter from Liam's lawyer took up 3 pages of legal language that basically said I needed to stop harassing his client and remove all social media posts about him. I read it twice, confused, because I hadn't posted anything anywhere. I'd locked down every account and hadn't mentioned his name online once. Chase called me back within an hour of me forwarding him photos of the letter. He said this was standard intimidation tactics, trying to make me back down before the hearing. He drafted a response that same afternoon pointing out I was seeking a protective order through proper legal channels, which wasn't harassment, and that I hadn't made any public statements about his client whatsoever. Hearing Chase's calm, factual tone helped, but I still felt sick knowing Liam was trying to paint himself as the victim. The next morning I woke up to 17 notifications on my phone. Someone I'd considered a close friend, Stella, had posted a long Facebook rant about how I was destroying a good man's life with lies and manipulation. She wrote paragraph after paragraph about Liam's character, how he'd never hurt anyone, how I was clearly unstable and seeking attention. She tagged mutual friends and used phrases like, innocent until proven guilty, and false accusations ruin lives. I read the whole thing sitting in Lucy's kitchen, my coffee getting cold in my hands. The comment section was full of people I knew agreeing with her, sharing the post, adding their own stories about how nice Liam had always been to them. I clicked unfriend and block on Stella's profile, then went through and blocked everyone who'd commented in support. Lucy found me crying at the kitchen table an hour later, and just held me while I sobbed about losing people I thought cared about me. She reminded me that anyone who believed his version without asking mine wasn't worth keeping, but it still hurt like losing family. 3 days later, I was in the grocery store trying to focus on a simple task like buying food. I turned down the cereal aisle and saw someone tall with dark hair wearing a jacket like Liam's. My chest tightened instantly and I couldn't breathe. The person turned slightly and I saw it wasn't him, just some random guy, but my body didn't care. I abandoned my cart right there in the middle of the aisle and stumbled toward the exit, my vision going spotty. I made it to my car and locked the doors, then called Aurora with shaking fingers. She answered on the second ring and talked me through breathing exercises, counting with me until my heart rate slowed. She explained that hypervigilance was completely normal after what I survived, that my brain was trying to protect me by scanning for threats constantly. She said it would get better with time and therapy, but right now I just needed to be patient with myself. I sat in that parking lot for 20 minutes before I felt steady enough to drive back to Lucy's, leaving my groceries behind. Mariana called me that evening with news. She said she'd been thinking about everything we discussed and she wanted to help, but she was too scared to testify in person. She asked if a written statement would be useful, something about his threats toward her that could show a pattern. I told her I'd check with Chase, and when I called him, he said even a brief written statement establishing Liam's history of similar behavior would strengthen our case. Mariana spent the next 2 days writing and revising her statement, making sure every detail was accurate and provable. She described his threats about ruining her reputation, the way he blamed her for things that weren't her fault, the fear she still carried years later. When she sent it to Chase, he called it powerful evidence that this wasn't an isolated incident or a misunderstanding. I thanked her through tears, knowing how much courage it took for her to put this on paper even without testifying face-to-face. The following Tuesday, I had a therapy appointment across town. I parked in the lot behind the building and sat in my car for a few minutes, gathering energy to go inside. That's when I noticed a vehicle 3 rows over with someone sitting in the driver's seat. I looked closer and my blood went cold. Liam was just sitting there watching me, his face blank and calm like this was totally normal. I grabbed my phone and got out, walking quickly toward the building entrance without looking back. Once inside, I found the receptionist and asked her to call the police, explaining there was someone with a restraining order against him in the parking lot. She got me into a back office while we waited. 2 officers arrived 15 minutes later and took my statement, but when they went outside to check, Liam's vehicle was gone. They took a report and said they'd document the violation, but without him actually approaching me, it was hard to prove intent. I gave them his license plate number from memory, and they said they'd follow up with Detective Hale. I rescheduled my therapy appointment and had Lucy come pick me up because I was too shaky to drive. That night, I knew I had to tell Chandler everything. The stress was affecting my work and I couldn't keep hiding it. I'd been distracted in meetings, missing deadlines, calling in sick. I scheduled a private meeting with him the next morning and brought copies of the police reports and medical photos. I explained the whole situation, watching his face shift from confused to horrified as he understood what I'd been dealing with. He didn't hesitate. He approved immediate temporary remote work so I wouldn't have to commute and risk running into Liam. He connected me with the company's employee assistance program for additional counseling support. He also documented everything in my file in case Liam tried to contact my workplace or escalate his harassment there. Having my boss fully informed and supportive lifted a weight I didn't know I'd been carrying. At least one part of my life felt more secure. Lucy's landlord agreed to meet with me after I showed him the police reports and explained the situation. He was older, a grandfather type, and he seemed genuinely concerned about my safety. He approved changing the locks on Lucy's apartment immediately, and didn't charge us for it. He also let me install a small camera in the peephole that would record anyone approaching the door. These felt like tiny victories, small barriers between me and danger. That night I slept slightly better, knowing the locks were new and I'd get an alert if anyone came to the door. I still woke up at every sound, my body on high alert, but having these security measures helped me feel less completely vulnerable. Chase called 2 days before the hearing with unexpected news. Liam's lawyer had sent a settlement offer. They proposed a mutual stay-away order with no findings of fact, meaning neither of us would be declared at fault. It would just be an agreement to leave each other alone with no admission of wrongdoing from either side. Chase explained this carefully, making sure I understood what it meant. Part of me was so tempted to just take it and be done. No hearing, no facing Liam in court, no risk of losing. But Chase advised against it. He said letting Liam avoid accountability meant he could do this to someone else. He reminded me we had strong evidence and good witnesses, and that a judge finding him at fault mattered for future protection. I thought about Mariana and how scared she still was years later. I thought about whoever might be next if Liam learned there were no real consequences. I told Chase to reject the offer. Detective Hale arranged for a forensic specialist to image my phone the next morning. I met her at the police station and watched her connect my phone to equipment that copied everything. She explained she was preserving all evidence with proper chain of custody, so it would hold up in court. I had to unlock everything and give her access to my messages, photos, emails. Watching a stranger scroll through my private conversations and pictures felt invasive and embarrassing, but I understood it was necessary. She worked for over an hour, methodically copying and documenting every threatening message, every photo Liam had sent, every piece of evidence we'd been building. When she finished, she gave me a receipt listing everything she'd preserved and explained I'd get my phone back in a few days. I left the station feeling exposed, but also relieved that the evidence was now officially documented and protected. The night before the hearing, Aurora came over to Lucy's apartment with a folder full of notes. We sat at the kitchen table and went through everything one more time. What to wear, something professional but not too formal. How to stay calm, breathing exercises, and grounding techniques. What to do if I saw Liam in the courthouse, where to look, how to avoid engaging. She reminded me to answer only what was asked, to pause before responding if I felt overwhelmed, to ask for breaks if I needed them. We practiced potential questions his lawyer might ask, the ways they might try to twist my words or make me look unstable. Lucy made dinner while we worked, and after Aurora left, I tried to sleep but couldn't. I lay in the dark, running through testimony in my head, imagining every possible scenario, preparing myself for the moment I'd have to face him again in that courtroom. The morning of the hearing, Lucy drove me to the courthouse because my hands were shaking too much to drive myself. We got there early, and I sat in the car for 10 minutes trying to calm down before going inside. The building was old brick with metal detectors at the entrance, and going through security felt like crossing into a different world, where everything moved slower and followed rules I didn't understand. Chase met me in the lobby and walked me through what would happen, but I barely heard him because I was scanning every face, looking for Liam. We took the elevator to the 3rd floor, and that's when I saw him. He was standing in the hallway outside the courtroom, talking to his lawyer like this was just another Tuesday. His suit was pressed, his hair was perfect, and he was smiling at something Dimitri said. The contrast between his calm face and my shaking hands made me understand how he'd fooled so many people for so long. He looked like a normal guy having a normal conversation, not someone who'd tried to throw me off a roof 3 weeks ago. Dimitri noticed me first and said something to Liam, who turned and looked directly at me. His expression didn't change at all. No anger, no guilt, nothing. Just a blank stare that lasted 3 seconds before he turned back to his lawyer. Chase touched my elbow and guided me to a bench on the opposite side of the hallway, positioning himself between me and Liam's line of sight. Aurora showed up a few minutes later with a folder of documents and sat on my other side. The bailiff called us into the courtroom at exactly 9 o'clock. The room was smaller than I expected, with wooden benches and fluorescent lights that made everything look washed out. The judge was already at the bench, a woman in her 50s with reading glasses on a chain. Chase led me to a table on the left side while Liam and Dimitri took the table on the right. I could feel him looking at me, but I kept my eyes forward. The judge asked if we were ready to proceed, and Chase stood up to present our case. He spoke clearly and calmly, explaining that this wasn't about revenge or money, just basic safety and protection from someone who had physically attacked me and threatened my life. He walked through the timeline starting from the bathroom photo and message, the stairwell assault that Seth witnessed, the rooftop attack, and the threatening messages that continued after. He kept it simple and factual, showing the judge medical photos of my injuries, the hospital report, and the police report Detective Hale had filed. Dimitri objected twice, but the judge overruled both times and told Chase to continue. When Chase finished his opening presentation, Dimitri stood up and immediately played the audio file from Liam's phone. My voice came through the courtroom speakers saying I planned everything to hurt him, that it was all my fault, that I made him do it. Hearing those words again in front of strangers made my stomach twist, but Chase had prepared me for this. The judge asked me to take the stand and explain the context of that recording. I walked to the witness box on shaking legs and put my hand on the Bible while the bailiff swore me in. Chase asked me to describe exactly where I was standing when those words were recorded. I explained I was bent backward over a 5-story ledge with Liam's hands on my shoulders, my feet barely touching the roof, looking down at the drop that would kill me if he let go. Chase asked what Liam had said before I spoke those words. I told the judge he said I had to admit what I did, or he'd push me over the edge. Chase asked if I believed he would actually push me. I said yes, because he'd already spent 10 minutes beating me and dragging me up there, and his hands were the only thing keeping me from falling. Dimitri cross-examined me, asking why I didn't scream for help or try to get away sooner. I explained I did scream in the stairwell, but Liam slammed my face into the railing and the music from the reception 5 floors down was too loud for anyone to hear. He asked why I hit Liam with a brick if I was really the victim. I said because he was choking me and I was about to pass out and the brick was the only thing within reach. The judge told Dimitri to move on. Chase entered the stairwell security footage into evidence next. The judge watched it on a screen at her bench and I could see her expression change as the video showed Liam grabbing my hair with both hands and yanking me toward the stairs while I tried to pull away. You could see my mouth open like I was yelling, see my hands trying to pry his fingers loose, see him slam me against the wall before dragging me higher. A few people in the courtroom gasped when he shoved my face into the railing. The timestamp showed the whole thing took 90 seconds from him grabbing me to us disappearing up the stairs. Dimitri argued the footage didn't show what happened before that moment, or what I might have said to provoke him. The judge said the footage showed a clear physical assault regardless of what preceded it, and she was admitting it as evidence. Chase then entered Seth's written statement into the record. Seth described finding me in the bathroom stall 20 minutes after the stairwell footage, hearing me crying and calling 911, seeing blood on my face and my dress torn, and my visible fear when venue staff tried to take me out of the locked bathroom. His statement was only 2 paragraphs, but it connected the timeline and showed the condition I was in immediately after. Next, Mariana appeared on a video screen set up near the judge's bench. She was calling from a room I didn't recognize, and she looked nervous even through the screen. Chase asked her to describe her relationship with Liam. She said they dated 2 years ago for about 4 months. Chase asked if Liam ever threatened her. She said yes. When she tried to break up with him, he told her he would ruin her reputation and make sure everyone knew she was unstable and manipulative. Chase asked if he ever became physical. She hesitated, then said he grabbed her arm hard enough to leave bruises once when she tried to leave his apartment. Chase asked if he ever said anything similar to what I reported. Mariana said he told her everything was her fault, that she made him act that way, and that no one would believe her if she told anyone. Hearing someone else describe the same pattern made me feel less crazy and less alone. Dimitri asked Mariana why she never filed a police report. She said because she was scared and she just wanted to get away from him. Dimitri suggested she was making this up to help me. Mariana said she wished she was making it up, but the bruise photos on her old phone proved otherwise. The judge thanked Mariana and ended her testimony. Then Dimitri called Liam to the stand. Liam walked up calmly and took the oath like he'd done this 100 times. Dimitri asked him to explain what happened at the wedding. Liam said I approached him aggressively in the stairwell, accused him of things he didn't do, and attacked him when he tried to walk away. He said I followed him to the roof and hit him with a brick unprovoked, and he only grabbed me to defend himself. Dimitri asked about the recording. Liam said I was confessing voluntarily because I felt guilty about attacking him. Chase stood up for cross-examination. He asked Liam if he'd RSVP'd to the wedding. Liam said no, he told the bride he couldn't attend because he'd be out of town. Chase asked why he was at the venue if he'd declined the invitation. Liam said he changed his mind at the last minute. Chase asked what time he arrived. Liam said around 8:30, after the ceremony. Chase pulled out the venue's roof access logs showing someone propped the door open at 6:15, 2 hours before Liam claimed to arrive. Chase asked if Liam had propped that door. Liam said no, he'd never been on the roof before that night. Chase asked how he knew where the roof access was if he'd never been there. Liam stammered and said he just followed the stairs. Chase asked why he followed me up multiple flights of stairs if I was the aggressor. Liam said he was trying to get away from me. The judge looked skeptical. Chase asked why the stairwell footage showed Liam grabbing my hair with both hands if he was trying to get away. Liam said the footage was taken out of context. Chase asked what context would make grabbing someone's hair and slamming their face into a railing acceptable. Dimitri objected. The judge sustained it but told the jury she'd seen the footage herself. After 2 hours of testimony and evidence presentation, the judge announced her decision. She said the evidence clearly showed a pattern of threatening behavior, physical violence, and continued contact, despite my requests to be left alone. She granted a 1-year restraining order with strict conditions. Liam had to stay 500 feet away from me at all times, couldn't contact me directly or through third parties, couldn't come near my workplace or Lucy's building, and had to surrender any firearms within 24 hours. The judge said violating any part of the order would result in immediate arrest and criminal charges. It wasn't a criminal conviction, but it was legal protection I didn't have before. The bailiff dismissed us and I stood up on wobbly legs. Lucy hugged me in the hallway while Chase gathered his papers. Liam walked past us toward the elevator, and as he passed, he muttered under his breath, just loud enough for me to hear. The bailiff was 3 feet away and heard it too. He immediately stepped in front of Liam and told him the restraining order was active as of right now, and any contact or threatening behavior would result in arrest. I pulled out my phone and typed the exact words into my notes app along with the time and location, my hands still shaking but steadier than they'd been all morning. The next day, Detective Hale called while I was at Lucy's apartment trying to process everything. She said the DA's office was reviewing all the evidence for potential criminal charges, including assault, attempted murder, and stalking. She warned me the timeline was uncertain, probably several weeks at minimum, and there was a chance they'd offer Liam a plea deal to avoid trial. But at least they were taking it seriously, treating it as a real crime instead of a personal dispute. She said the restraining order and the courthouse incident both strengthened the case because they showed a pattern of behavior and disregard for court orders. I thanked her and hung up, feeling exhausted but also something else I hadn't felt in weeks. Not safe exactly, but protected. Like there were finally barriers between me and him, even if those barriers were just pieces of paper and legal consequences. Sophia's text came through 2 days after the hearing while I was grocery shopping with Lucy. The message said she didn't know the full story and maybe she should have asked more questions, but she also thought I could have handled things differently instead of making a scene at her wedding. I stared at my phone in the cereal aisle and felt something shift inside me. I didn't owe her an explanation about surviving attempted murder. I didn't need to justify using a brick to defend myself to someone who wasn't there on that roof. I put my phone back in my pocket without responding and grabbed a box of granola, focusing on what I could control instead of people who refused to understand. Lucy saw my face and squeezed my shoulder, not asking what happened, just being there. That afternoon, I went to the phone store and changed my number, sitting in the plastic chair while the employee transferred everything over. I made a list of essential contacts to update: my parents, Lucy, Detective Hale, Chase, Aurora, my boss Chandler. Everyone else could find me through social media if they really needed to reach me. I changed my email address too, setting up a new account and forwarding only work-related messages from the old one. The relief hit me immediately, like someone had lifted a weight off my chest. I wasn't checking my phone every 5 minutes anymore, bracing for threats or accusations. The constant buzzing anxiety in my stomach started to ease. I could put my phone down and not think about it for hours. Lucy helped me start looking at apartments the next weekend, scrolling through listings for buildings with actual security features. We visited 6 places over 2 days, checking for cameras in the lobby, testing how secure the main entrance locks were, counting exits and fire escapes. The 3rd building we saw had a locked lobby with a buzzer system, cameras covering every entrance, and a security company that monitored the building overnight. The 1-bedroom apartment on the 4th floor had windows facing the street so I could see anyone approaching, and the door had a heavy deadbolt plus a chain lock. I signed the lease that afternoon, feeling something close to hope for the first time in weeks. Having my own space again, somewhere Liam had never been and couldn't find easily, made me feel like I was taking my life back piece by piece. In therapy that week, I finally started talking about the guilt I'd been carrying around like a backpack full of rocks. My therapist asked what I thought I'd done to deserve being thrown off a roof, and I couldn't come up with an answer that made sense. She helped me see that nothing I could have done would justify attempted murder, that even if I had actually humiliated him somehow, his response was criminal violence. The words made sense logically, but believing them emotionally took longer. We worked on it slowly over multiple sessions, breaking down each piece of self-blame until I could see how twisted the logic was. So Aurora met me at the police station to help register the restraining order with the local precincts, making sure every officer in the area had Liam's photo and knew to call if he showed up near me. We went to my workplace next, meeting with building security to add him to their watch list and giving them copies of the court order. Aurora helped me create a network of people who knew the situation and could respond quickly if needed. Having this system in place made me feel less alone in staying safe, like I wasn't just relying on my own vigilance anymore. Other people were watching too, ready to help if something went wrong. I spent a Saturday afternoon organizing all my case documents into labeled folders, creating a system that made sense. Medical records in one folder, police reports in another, court documents in a third. I made copies of everything and stored them in different locations in case something happened to the originals. Then I sat down and wrote thank you notes to Seth for his statement, to Mariana for her testimony, to Lucy for letting me stay with her, to Aurora for guiding me through the legal system, to Chase for representing me in court. Taking time to acknowledge the people who helped me survive this felt important, like I was building something positive instead of just defending against threats. 6 weeks after the rooftop, Detective Hale called to say the DA had filed criminal charges against Liam for violating the restraining order. The charges were based on his threatening messages after the hearing and the comment he made in the courthouse hallway that the bailiff witnessed. It wasn't attempted murder charges yet, but it was actual criminal consequences for his actions instead of just a civil order. The DA was still building the assault case, gathering evidence and interviewing witnesses, but at least this showed they were taking it seriously. Each small step forward felt like progress, even when the bigger justice moved slowly. Mariana and I met for coffee at a quiet place outside both our neighborhoods, comparing safety strategies and swapping tips about staying alert without becoming paranoid. She told me about her life 3 years after leaving Liam, how she still checked her rearview mirror constantly and avoided certain parts of town, but she was also working a job she loved and dating someone kind who respected her boundaries. Seeing her functional and happy gave me hope that I could get there too, that this wouldn't define my entire life forever. We agreed to check in monthly, creating our own support system for people who understood what it meant to survive him. I moved into my new apartment the following week, Lucy helping me carry boxes up 4 flights of stairs because the elevator was broken. We installed extra locks and set up the security camera I'd bought, testing it from different angles until we were satisfied it covered the whole entrance. On a quiet Tuesday evening 2 weeks later, I was sitting on my couch eating leftover pasta and watching a cooking show when I realized something had changed. I'd slept through the whole night before without waking up at every small sound. I'd gone to the grocery store that afternoon without spending the entire time scanning faces for Liam. I was still alert and careful, still checking my locks twice before bed and keeping my phone charged and nearby. But I was also eating dinner and watching TV and making plans for the weekend. I was living my life instead of just surviving minute to minute, building something new instead of just defending what remained. Man, that was a journey from absolute terror to actually being able to eat dinner and watch TV again. Glad she made it through. Thanks for watching this intense one with me. Subscribe if you're into survival stories that don't sugarcoat how hard recovery is. I'll catch you in the next one. Take care out there.